Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. In a post-apartheid Indian township of Durban, South Africa, still fraught with internalized colonial violence, Lishana tends to her dying mother. Attempting to process the experience, she turns to her own practice and ends up dissolving the boundaries between the personal and the national, the tangible and the mystical, the living and the dead. What a terrific film. Honored to have with us today the director of Mother, You Have Not Died Yet, but You Will. And when you do, you will finally be alive. Director, writer, cinematographer, and editor Advik Beni. Advik, welcome to Cinemaphile.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here speaking to you.
Well, I'm honored to have you on the program. This is one of those films that it does take a minute or two to kind of adjust yourself to the way in which it was shot, the story itself, and as we begin to fall into the lives of the different people in the film, it takes us on quite a journey. I'll get to the basic question here, which is what was the inspiration for the film?
I think the film began about 6 years ago as sort of just these conversations with my auntie who's in the film, Lishana. And it was these conversations about just the landscape of South Africa at that time, a post-apartheid nation, pretty recently, like not even 30 years. It's kind of a very strange place to live in. And at that time, Lishana's mother was still alive, so the conversations were very different. It was just about how it was living within this Indian township and kind of the dynamics between different races. Because yes, it's post-apartheid, but still those remnants are very much present. And then in those discussions and in the years of those discussions and writing and just discussing, it wasn't going to be a film at that point, just talks. And then her mother passed away in 2021. So the film idea kind of formed from that. Like we wanted to explain the thesis question was like, how do we explain South Africa to anyone outside of this landscape? It's such a strange, complex, beautiful, oftentimes it fills you with anger. It fills you with so much. It's impossible to explain that to anyone outside of the landscape, but it stemmed from that thesis question of just how do we kind of represent the space that we both love and have a strange relationship to?
Well, one of the filters that I have as someone who's lived in the United States my entire life is that basically known South Africa as an apartheid state and not much beyond it. I assumed that it was predominantly the indigenous peoples of South Africa that were victims of apartheid. I did not know about what seems like a fairly robust Indian diaspora as well.
Yeah, that diaspora, which is I'm a part of, actually dates back over 160 years ago. So
Yeah.
when the British abolished slavery, they still needed labor in their many colonies. And where they looked for was their biggest colony, which was India. So that's where you see a lot of population of Indian people in South Africa, in Guyana, in a lot of the Caribbean countries. And a lot of it was to work on the sugarcane plantations. So it technically wasn't labeled as slavery, but indentured labor. And there was these promises. India was going through a famine at that time. So there was these many promises of you would get enough money, you'd be able to own land in these other countries. You'll be able to buy your ticket back to the home country. But a lot of these promises were futile and not tangible in any way. People came to South Africa and a lot of the Indian population stayed. So it's a very deeply embedded diaspora, and the culture has become a merge of Indian and South African culture. And yes, during apartheid, Indian people were also subjugated by the apartheid government on different levels. There was like a hierarchy. Of course, black people were treated the worst, and then there were colored people, which is another racial group within South Africa, and then Indian people. There was a sort of hierarchy between it, but
Right.
definitely the white population was much above the top. And the film kind of stems from those hierarchies too. The Indian population, in some ways, tried to posit itself as superior to the black population, and that caused a lot of tension. And the film is trying to open up and meditate on that as these tensions are kind of ripening up again.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the U.S. apartheid
Yeah.
system, but it's very much feels in the same way as when slavery was technically ended, there became something called sharecroppers here in the
Yeah.
United States, which they could theoretically be more of a master of their own destiny. So as I'm hearing you talk about this, the parallels are hard to miss. Well, the film is a very much a family-centric story of a mother and daughter, but it veers into, I'm not sure how to describe it, but how would you describe the time changes that we experience in this film? I want people to understand because when we first initially meet up with I want to make sure I say Lishana
Yeah.
and
Leela.
Leela, we see them doing the basic things, preparing a meal, kind of interacting with one another. So anyway, let's just kind of talk about that you're as a filmmaker, as an artist, what were you thinking about in the structure of this, telling this story?
For me, the film and the relationship between the mother and the daughter became this vehicle to talk about the nation. Anticipatory grief of of a daughter who knows their mother is going to pass away. And because this whole film was reenacted, the live action sequences are reenacted because the mother's already passed away. So it's kind of reenacting this mother-daughter relationship within the same household as a vehicle to talk about that anticipatory grief. Because for me, this is kind of my thesis, and I don't want to force a reading on anybody. South Africa, for me, is a country that I feel didn't grieve properly for the end of apartheid. We had the kind of Truth and Reconciliation Committee, or what we call the Rainbow Nation, which is this beautiful utopic idea of a country where we have diversity and we all live together, which is beautiful. And I think for some capacity, it was important. It stopped a sort of civil war from happening in that transition period. But what it did do was sweep a lot of the issues that we had under the carpet. We didn't quite grieve or like repent for what happened. And that's why 30 years later, we're seeing these wounds start to bleed again, essentially. So for me, it is a cyclicality that made sense. And grief feels cyclical in many ways. You go through these processes, but it's never once. Like you'll go through, you'll come
Yes, you're
back.
right.
It fluctuates, and that's how my
Yeah.
nation feels right now, going through this strange grieving process. So for me, that was the jumping between like the live action to the barbershop to this other third realm that stitches both together, which I like to see of as like the ancestral realm,
Mhm.
which is the world where this mother is both alive and dead, and kind of Lishana can talk to us directly as viewers and break that kind of facade of the film in some capacity.
I think it's just a brilliant way and your answer, just as you described how you put this together, is such a brilliant way of explaining the sort of macro issue, this macro sort of weight upon the nation. And going back to, once again, go back to the United States, something that I'm familiar with, we never had a reconciliation
Mhm.
commission. And I think that we're still fighting the Civil War as we sit here today. The
Mhm.
Civil War, not even post and
Yeah.
Reconstruction and all that. And in fact, I think we are doomed to repeat this behavior because of that. At least in South Africa, there was an attempt to recognize it. I think the South won the cultural war in this country in many ways, and they may have lost the battle, but I
Mhm.
think we're still dealing with all of those ramifications. So I want to the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think this film it's applicable to many nations around the world.
Definitely, and I definitely see those parallels between South Africa and USA. And I mean, even thinking about these new Afrikaans refugees that have come to
Yeah.
America, and kind of this government is kind of trying to draw those parallels to, I mean, it's a very toxic way that our countries are almost replicating itself. South Africa kind of looks in a twisted way to America as like how to form our newly country, which is not the model, I feel. There is those parallels for sure.
And again, I don't, this is not a history lesson. I'm not trying to make it one, but it's colonialism in
Yeah.
its writ large. Colonialism is really what the world is still dealing with. And now with migration around the world, all of these things are coming, these issues and our ability to recognize human beings who are in need of assistance is being clouded by this idea of colonial
Yeah,
power in so
for
many
sure.
ways. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me in that conversation. But the filmmaking part of this, I just really, really appreciated the way you shot it. This feels in many ways like we're watching an extended home movie.
Hmm.
And even, and maybe this is a stretch, I got this sort of Warhol-esque, whatever happens is going to happen kind of vibe to the film in terms of the way that the characters interact with one another, the way the story unfolds. But it takes me back to that era of
Hmm.
Warhol, even. I don't know if that's too far of a stretch, but it has that feeling about it. Or there's a lot of other found footage films or that kind of stuff, but it really, it takes, like I said, it takes a minute to understand what's going on. But I love the way the film plays out.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, that's the first time I've heard wow, but it's an interesting kind of connection. For me, yeah, it does have that home video found footage quality, and that was important to me. The film is shot primarily on Super 8,
Yeah,
especially all the live action sequences that are shot within Durban, within Cato Manor, the township in Durban, was all Super 8. The animation sequences, the so-called ancestral realm,
oh,
is 16 millimeter. And then we use techniques such as etching or shooting on the Oxbury or the optical printer to create these abstract animations. But for me, it was super important to shoot on film. Oh, of course, I really love the textures, and I love film and I love celluloid. But for me, there was another layer to that that I think has been important throughout all my work, which is that celluloid was not really used in South Africa by people who looked like me, by brown and black people. When apartheid was implemented, Kodak boycotted, like quite rightfully so. So those who had access to film were the upper class white families or the middle class white families, and you could only see white bodies in South Africa on celluloid. So for me, like it's kind of a reclaiming of being able to see people who look like me on
yeah,
that film. And another layer to that, the chemistry of the celluloid itself is designed for white skin. So it's like already this battle, like it's just a kind of a little, it feels like a little wind, like, oh, look, I'm going to use it for my people on my land. And yeah, I think that that's one, like the political side of it, of why I made that decision. But also, I do just love the textures, and it creates this intimacy that feels so tactile and allows us to live with the mother and daughter, and allows us to also then escape into this third realm of the ancestral space in such a way that makes you feel like you belong to the space, even if you're not from the space, if you know what I'm saying.
yeah, I do. And ultimately, it's a very intimate film.
Hmm.
You're in the room with the people that we see in the film. We're in the barber shop. And by the way, I saw barber shop is it Beni? Is it
Yeah, been in my family for almost 100 years. It was my great granddad's barbershop, and yeah, it's still running to this day.
Fantastic. Oh, I'm so glad you were able. I saw that. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I just want to quickly remind our listeners we're speaking with Advik Beni, and he is the director of a film that a title you won't forget once you hear it. Mother, you have not died yet, but you will. And when you do, you will finally be alive. And it is premiering. I want to let people know it's also premiering at the FID Marseille. Am I Marseille?
But
Marseille?
must say, yeah,
Yeah. FID Marseille world premiere on July 9th, and it is part of the international competition and first film competition in Marseille, France. And congratulations on that.
thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited to get the film out there. It's been 6 years, so I'm just like so thrilled to have it. Like,
You've been working on this for how long?
like 6 years from discussion and like,
Yeah, yeah,
from
yeah, putting it together.
formulation. Like it's taken a while, and it's hard because it's so personal and it's dealing with a family member. So it takes time. I think it's good that it did take that time.
This is not like a film most people most of the time have seen. So I really want to underscore this. Once you settle into what you're watching, it is such a compelling film. It's so much about family. It's so much about experience. It's so much about, as we've been discussing, about apartheid and the residue of apartheid. And I also noticed that you have some very interesting collaborators in the film, of making the film. Neil Vias, producer who works here in Los Angeles. She is part of putting this together. And Rob Rice, who just jumped out at me in his resume, a CRISPR engineer from the Broad Institute at MIT, sounds like a pretty smart person there you're working with in this endeavor. So I just want to. It's great. You're working with some really interesting people, and I imagine they bring a very different or very a kind of perspective to the film as well.
Yes, definitely. Rob, they're both incredible filmmakers in their own right too, and
Mhm.
amazing directors, and I admire their work so much. Nell's also my partner, so I have extra love for her. But she also did a lot of the animation in this film and that beautiful kind of working with the archives and the etching on the old Bollywood film, these kind of very tactile moments. She just is incredible at working with those images. And because it was such an intimate film, like I didn't want a big team, you know, I want to be there for most of it, but you do need those hands to kind of, in those moments that you just feel like, oh, I'm so close to this. I'm seeing my auntie, you know, like
Yeah.
how do I navigate that? So both of them are just really incredible in helping me like find track again.
And that's a good description. You used a great word. It's a very
Hmm.
tactile film.
Yeah, for sure.
You can smell the food that's being made. You can see the kind of the family gathering around. You can feel like you're obviously in the room, but and then also the barbershop. I loved that the photography in the film. I love the way that plays out and how it plays into the story here. She's finding her way back into her own life. And I want to talk about that part of the film, the photography and sort of what you were going for there.
Yeah, I mean, it was inspired a lot by the photography in the 70s, 80s during the apartheid era. A lot of the shops in Durban and the photography shops were owned by Indian people. And there was kind of three major studios who would take these photographs. And they're the one of the most beautiful they're incredible photographs because they were all of black workers who would want to send photos back to their loved ones who lived in the township. So they dress up in these incredible, almost campy outfits at times, Western wear and flowers and holding a phone up. It's really beautiful, but it was inspired by those which were taken by the Indian photographers back then. So once again, that was kind of like a reenactment and the cyclicality of events of, yes, that happened in apartheid, but it still happens and we still need to document these
Yeah.
things and we still need to witness each other and build our solidarity again. And I think the film is also ultimately, yes, one side when it began was how do we describe South Africa, but how do we build our solidarity again? Because as we mentioned, like these colonizing projects that are still active, and we need to have the solidarity amongst peers in being able to survive and withstand these times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all of this, and again, it's sort of the core of the film is that you're in the room, that
Hmm.
you're experiencing things, even though it's hard to imagine experiencing the apartheid regime. But and also, I was thinking of when I was watching the this part of the film about the photography. I was fortunate enough to have Raoul Peck on, and he did a documentary about Ernest Cole,
Hmm.
who was a famous African American who came to the United States at one point, but was out of South Africa's apartheid system.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was any kind of an inspiration or a reference in any kind of
I
any
mean,
kind.
I love Raoul Peck. I have not seen the film yet, but so the South African photographers of the day, especially my favorite is Santu Mafokeng, whose photography is incredible, and he captured apartheid life in an incredible manner. And we had really beautiful photographers, specifically people who took photography for Drum magazine during apartheid, which is a
Yeah,
very important publication. I mean, I think photography was one of the few mediums we had during apartheid to kind of represent ourselves and also
yeah,
to represent ourselves with dignity, you
yeah,
know, and through
yeah,
our own lens. And a lot of them had to self-exile
yeah,
because of the regime. So, yeah, but all of these ancestors and amazing photographers were definitely
yeah.
inspirations for the film.
Well, I'm the beneficiary of having seen the film Ernest Cole, the documentary about Ernest Cole, and seeing those images. And so and I'm sure that some part of my brain was seeing it through your film through that lens of what I remembered from, yes, what you just described. Fascinating stuff. And the fact that filmmakers can have and artists can have these conversations across many decades of many, in very different kind of iterations is one of the things I love about film and filmmakers. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. That's amazing to you.
Again, the film is Mother, you have not died yet, but you will. And when you do, you will finally be alive again. That feels like a proverb. Is that something that was spoken? It was something that you came to? Because it almost feels like a proverb to me.
It was one of the very early things I had. I think before I even started shooting the film, the title was there, and it
Okay.
just, I think for me, it had that it's that cyclicality again. It feels like, okay, we're just gonna keep going, we're just gonna keep going, and it repeats itself. And I went through many times. I'm like, oh, this title's too long. What am I doing? And people love it or people hate it, and I was like, no, it just feels like the film, and it was that seed that kind of blossomed it out. I kept it. Yeah, and it does have that proverbial sense to it, which I really love. And the film,
Yeah.
in some capacity, is just a 74-minute proverb, you know?
Yeah. Well, obviously you made the film you wanted. Obviously from the title, you had complete creative control
Mhm.
over what it was that you were doing, and bless you for that because it's that as your career moves forward, that may be a more and more of a struggle. I don't know, maybe you'll always be making the personal films that you want to, but I feel like I can say this. Congratulations on this film. I really truly look forward to more work from you at whatever iteration that might be. But congratulations on Mother. You have not died yet, but you will. And when you do, you will finally be alive. Director Advik Beni. Advik, thank you so very much for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was so wonderful to talk to you today.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.